Welcome back. This is week 7 of Fantasy Central. This is your host, Zach, and I'm here with our very own fantasy expert, the guru himself, Jeffe.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How are we doing this week?
I hope everybody is doing great. Real quick, if you're listening on WUBI Live Radio, we appreciate you guys sticking around as the Horsemen Pro Football Talk just wrapped up. A reminder to all of you out there, you can catch the Horsemen Pro Football Talk and Fantasy Central back to back on WUBI Live Radio. The app is available for free. Download on your app store, or you can head over to wubi.live for more information. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or simply listening on your favorite podcast platform, we also appreciate you guys tuning in as we continue to grow and improve. We look forward to building a great community and developing a relationship with you. We're not these famous network know-it-all celebrity guys that everybody's become accustomed to know. We're football fans just like you. We started these shows to give back and get others involved in the conversations that we were having naturally during football season. So again, I want to say thank you. I don't know if Jeffe wants to say a few words in that or not, but I'll give him the opportunity.
No, you pretty much hit it on the head right there. Like you said, we were talking about football all the time. Anyways, it just made sense to start a podcast, share some of our knowledge, and gain a community that we can grow with and have fun with as we go. The more support that we get over time, the more we're going to be able to do for the community and get back to the community. So, we appreciate anybody that's listening, and we hope you share with your people, whether it's friends or family, however it is. And we just hope to build a family here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. All right. Well, with that said, let's talk some fantasy football, baby. We have a good show for you guys today. As always, Jeffe is going to run down some guys that may be available out on the wire for you, followed by his top 10 fantasy backs and receivers for week 7. And we'll wrap up with some discussions on surefire stardoms and situms. So without further ado, I always struggle saying that. Without further ado, let's get to it. Week 7 waiver wire. Lots of team on the buys this week. The Bills, Cowboys, Vikings, Steelers, Chargers, and Jaguars are all on vacation. So who are you targeting on the wire to fill some of these roles for the week, Jeffe?
Yeah, well, the unfortunate thing with so many good teams on a bye week, and 6 teams on a bye, that's a lot of teams there. And so as much as you may need people to fill some roles because there are a lot of big name players out, there's not a whole lot to choose from this week, but I have 6 for you this week. The first one here, and there's no particular order, whatever you need is what order it is. J.D. McKissick is the one that I think I'm targeting first. Antonio Gibson is having trouble staying on the field with a shin injury, which I'm thinking compensation for the shin injury caused the calf injury. And if he's not there, J.D. McKissick gets thrusted into a great role on a team that is probably going to be playing from behind. And look, J.D. McKissick is running back 23 on the year. So, a flex play already. And in this last game, he had 19 fantasy points. He had 8 catches for 110 yards in that game. And he might not have 100 yards receiving every game, but he could. If Antonio Gibson is out, he should get a pretty big workload here. So J.D. McKissick is top for me. Next up is going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones. There's a chance Landry comes back this week for the Browns, but they're on a short week, so you have to think, they may go ahead, hold him out, and then try to get Nick Chubb and Jarvis Landry back in the lineup in the next game. And look, OBJ also might not be playing in this next game. So Donovan Peoples-Jones, he had a good game against the Cardinals, who have had a pretty good defense. How will he do as a number 1 receiver? I don't know, but you have to imagine he'll get a lot of targets no matter who the quarterback is there. Especially, a veteran quarterback is probably going to lean on a guy who just came off a big game. So while he's wide receiver 64 on the year, I think he's somebody that needs to be picked up this week. T.Y. Hilton is going to be the next guy on the list. And, he got hurt in the game, went out of the game with a groin injury. And I think if the Colts were in a position where they needed him to be in the game, they could have put him back in. He looked like he was ready to get back in the game, but they didn't need him to. It was his first game of the season. You know, you don't want to put a 31-year-old wide receiver in to re-aggravate that. So they held him out. I imagine he's going to be playing, especially because Paris Campbell just got put on the IR. And he came out and he looked good while he was in there. He looked very good. He looked like the old TY again. He was making plays. He had a big catch downfield. He had the first catch of the entire game. So T.Y. Hilton, if he's available in your league, go pick him up because he's going to be very useful. Ramondre Stevens is coming up next year, running back for the Patriots, and he looks like he could be filling that James White role, which is very valuable in this offense, especially with a rookie quarterback who is throwing a lot of passes short. I think Ramondre Stevenson looked good. He's RB74 on the season, hasn't had a whole lot of usage, but in this last game, he had 15.2 fantasy points in standard PPR leagues. And, you know, that kind of usage is good enough for a flex play any given week, especially on a big bye week, somebody that you can throw in there. Because it hasn't been consistent to this point, it's a pretty risky play, and I understand that. But like I said, if he's taking that James White role, a flex play for him is going to be very nice week to week. The fifth option I have here is going to be Dearness Johnson, who, as we know, on a short week, they've already ruled out Nick Chubb, and Kareem Hunt is on the IR. Dearness Johnson is the next guy up. And the only thing that worries me here, you know, they already use a committee with two running backs, but Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are very good running backs. So the next two up are Dearness Johnson and Demetric Felton. And Demetric Felton was getting some passing game work in the game against the Cardinals. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if Dearness Johnson has strictly that Nick Chubb role where he's not getting much passing game work, and Felton might be the guy that you wanted to pick up. You know, keep both of them on your radars, but right now it's looking like Dearness Johnson, he's been in this offense longer. They've used him more on a short week. I think he could have a heavy workload. So go ahead, throw him into your Adams this week. And the last one I'm going to have here is the same guy I had here last week, but I've seen in a lot of my leagues. You know, because of the bye weeks and because the guys getting hurt, I need a tight end this week. And Ricky Seals-Jones is still there. And he's already tight end 23 on the year. He had 15.8 fantasy points. He's been good in the last 2 weeks. He's getting a bunch of targets. And, you know, Curtis Samuel can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field. We're not sure if he's going to be playing this week yet. Even if he does, Ricky Seals-Jones has done enough to carve out some trust with his quarterback, especially a dump down option that he so desperately needs. So Ricky Seals-Jones needs to be picked up in every league.
There you have it. Hefe's week 7 waiver wire picks. I definitely like Ricky Seals-Jones. I picked him up last week. He turned out pretty well for me over the weekend. T.Y. Hilton, especially with Paris Campbell being out, he's definitely going to be a go-to with his experience and his quickness. And J.D. McKissick, I actually had in both leagues. I had to give him up last week because of some serious injuries I got going on for my team. But I do like J.D. McKissick. I haven't necessarily started him a whole lot this year, but he definitely is coming into his own in that Washington offense. So he will definitely get you some points there. So I can't argue with any of that. To run it down real quick, you wanna go back through it real quick for everybody listening?
Yeah, so 6 we have here in no particular order. It's J.D. McKissick for the Washington football team, Donovan Peoples-Jones, the Browns wide receiver, T.Y. Hilton, the Colts wide receiver, Ramondre Stevenson, the Patriots running back, Dearness Johnson, the next man up running back for the Browns, and Ricky Seals-Jones, the tight end filling in for Logan Thomas.
All right, there you go. Let's transition into Hefe's top 10 running backs for week 7 of fantasy football. We'll start at number 10.
All right, number 10, I slotted in J.D. McKissick, assuming that the Washington football team is going to want Antonio Gibson to get healthy. You know, he has a bright future. He has a shin injury. Now he has a calf injury. Like, I feel like they're not going to want to continue to push that. So assuming he doesn't play, I think J.D. McKissick has a huge opportunity here to have a big week and be a top 10 back. And I thought about not putting him and putting Darrell Williams in here because Darrell Williams looked very good as a starter for the Chiefs, and I think he'll have a good week too. You know, I just thought I should mention that. It's like 10A, 10B for me is J.D. McKissick and Darrell Williams. But I put J.D. McKissick here. Green Bay is 15th against running backs. I think he'll have a good week. Number 9 this week is going to be Josh Jacobs going up against Philadelphia, who has struggled to stop the run this year. And the Raiders have seemed, at least in their first game, to want to go back to abusing the run game and using that for play action for the downfield pass game. And Josh Jacobs is going to benefit greatly from that. And like I said, Philadelphia not good on the ground in terms of defense this year. They're 28th against running backs this season in terms of fantasy. And so Josh Jacobs, I think, has an opportunity to have a little 130, 140 yard game, couple touchdowns in this one. I think the Raiders are going to coast to one and lean on him in this one. Number 8 this week is going to be Cordero Patterson coming off of bye week. Thank goodness. A lot of people are going to be happy about that with all the running back injuries that have happened. And they're going up against Miami. And Miami is 29th in terms of fantasy against running backs. And look, he is a top 10 running in standard PPR fantasy leagues. Cordell Patterson is the number 10 ranked running back, and he had a bye week. So I expect him to stay involved in this offense. Arthur Smith has made a point to get him involved. It's not that he plays a whole bunch of snaps. I'm pretty sure Mike Davis is getting that. It's like a 65 to 35 split in terms of snaps. But Cordell Patterson makes the most of his touches. His role in that offense is one that is very fantasy friendly. So Cordell Patterson coming in at number 8 against Miami for me.
All right. Yeah, we've already touched on J.D. McKissick. I like him against Green Bay as well. Josh Jacobs is one of the guys on my surefire stardoms for running backs this week. Look, teams know the Eagles are not very good defending the run. That's why they lead the league in rushing plays against them with 33 per game, while also giving up on average 135 yards. I think the Raiders are going to get Jacobs going, and he'll score above his 15 fantasy points per game average. So this should be a very good game for Josh Jacobs. I agree with you there. And number 8, Cordero Patterson against a very poor Miami defense. So those are not bad choices starting out the top 10. We'll move on to number 7.
Number 7 coming in is Jonathan Taylor going up against San Francisco on Sunday Night Football. San Francisco is 17th in the NFL in terms of fantasy when it comes to running backs. And look, when the Colts were up by 7 points against the Texans at halftime, Jonathan Taylor had 6 yards. You're right. Nyheim Hines was getting a bunch of the carries, and the passing game worked in the first half for some reason. And then they come out in the second half. Jonathan Taylor has 140 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, and the Colts win the game by 28. And after the game, Frank Reich said Jonathan Taylor needs to get 20 touches a game. And from a fantasy perspective, if you have Jonathan Taylor, you love to hear that because that means excellence for the rest of the season. You're going to see him ball out every game because he's a beast. This team is getting healthy. The offensive line is getting Braden Smith and Quentin Nelson back very soon. Maybe not both for this game, but either way, Jonathan Taylor, if he's getting the touches, he'll get the production. He comes in at number 7 for me. Number 6 is going to be Aaron Jones going up against the Washington football team, who, as we know, are not good on defense this year. They're 21st in terms of fantasy against running backs. And look, I assume the Packers are going to lead for most of this game, which means that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon should both have pretty good games. But with Aaron Jones being the lead back, he gets the passing game work from the running backs in that offense. So Aaron Jones was an easy pick for me this week in the top 10. I just had to figure out which spot, and he comes in at number 6 for me.
I like both of those guys almost every single week. Jonathan Taylor's proven himself time and time again. He was the 3rd best running back in the league last year, and Aaron Jones just an absolute monster in both the run game and the passing game. He should have a huge game as well. I was going to add him to my must start, but I didn't in favor of some other guys. But I like both of them there at number 7, number 6, and we'll move on to your number 5.
So starting off the top 5 here is going to be DeAndre Swift. And look, coming off of a week where the Lions as a team didn't even score a touchdown, which means no touchdowns for Swift, he still put up 17 point something points in standard PPR leagues. And with the usage that he's getting and the fact that he can put up points without the touchdowns is a great sign. They're going up against the Rams this week. I expect the Rams to put pressure on Goff, which will force checkdowns. And if teams are locking up Hawkinson, then the real check down option here is going to be DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams when he's on the field. So DeAndre Swift should have a decent game. It's good. I know it's a tough matchup, but like I said, against the Rams, but they're 14th in the league against running backs in terms of fantasy. And with the usage that DeAndre Swift gets, I think he has an opportunity to continue to be a top 10 back. He comes in at number 5 for me. Number 4 is going to be Joe Mixon, who had a great game against the Lions. He did what they needed him to do. They were up in that game. They leaned on Joe Mixon, and he came through for him, had a big-time game. And this week they play Baltimore, who's 23rd in the league against running backs in terms of fantasy. And I think Joe Mixon is going to have an opportunity to have a good game. I think this is going to be a close game for most of the game, so it's not like the Bengals should have to pass a whole lot in this game. I think they do a pretty good job of staying balanced and keeping Joe Burrow out of danger in that way. So Joe Mixon, I feel like, should have a good game. He's more involved in the passing game now that Giovanni Bernard's not a part of the team. So Joe Mixon coming in at number 4 for me this week. Number 3 is going to be Darrell Henderson, who – this is an offense that in the past we're so used to it being a committee backfield. And then Cam Akers gets hurt, and it looks like, okay. And then they trade for Sony Michel, and you think they are definitely going to be running a committee here. Neither of these guys are going to be that fantasy relevant. But Darrell Henderson is taking control of this backfield. And even with the other guys that are there, and even when Sony Michel gets his opportunities, he looks all right. But Darrell Henderson is just so good. And they play Detroit, who is 31st in the NFL against running backs in terms of fantasy. So with the usage that he gets, with the matchup, I expect him to carry almost 30 times, if not more, in this game. The only thing that'll stop production for him is if they rest their starters in the fourth quarter, because they're absolutely annihilating the Lions. That's really the only thing that worries me. But as long as he's in, I think he has a good opportunity to continue being a top 10 back, and he comes in at number 3 for me.
Yeah, I also have Darrell Henderson on my must starts this week. They're playing the Lions. Like you said, the Lions are 0-6 on the year. That's not going to change with this game. The Rams are just too good offensively, so I expect them to get up big early and start the ground and pound lead, starting off with Darrell Henderson. He should get a nice workload, high volume against this Lions team that gives up 132 yards a game to rushers, and he has that passing game upside as well. So I also agree there with Darrell Henderson. Your number 5 was DeAndre Swift against the Rams. He definitely is getting the volume, so that's a good play there. And Joe Mixon, I'm high on Joe Mixon in this Bengals offense. They're putting up the numbers, and they can compete with anybody in this league, so I also agree there. So to kind of run down so far before we hit the top 2, number 10, J.D. McKissick, number 9, Josh Jacobs, number 8, Cordero Patterson, number 7, Jonathan Taylor, number 6, Aaron Jones, number 5, DeAndre Swift, number 4, Joe Mixon, number 3, Darrell Henderson, and now we'll move on to number 2.
Number 2 this week, coming off of a bye, is going to be a fresh Alvin Kamara. And look, this offense is getting some guys back on the offensive line. They're getting at least one receiver back. We're not sure about Michael Thomas yet. We're waiting to hear as the practices evolve through the week. So at the time of this recording, we're not sure. But look, if they're getting offensive linemen back and getting pieces back, you have to think the offense is going to be more explosive. And Alvin Kamara going up against Seattle here, who was 30th in the league against running backs already. And you would assume that with the Saints getting players back on defense as well and coming off a bye, these guys are rested up. They're going to get on dangerous-less Seahawks team here and be up in this game and lean on Alvin Kamara. So I think Alvin Kamara has an opportunity to have maybe even a 30-plus point week, 2-3 touchdowns in this game. I think it's going to be a big Alvin Kamara week. And number 1 here, the obvious, I haven't said it yet, he's playing Kansas City, who's 24th against running backs. The analysis here that I have for Derrick Henry is that he's unstoppable. He's the number 1 running back. If we redraft today, he's the unanimous number 1 for everybody.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. The dude's an absolute monster. He has a size. I think I saw Monday when they put it on. I think he's what 6'3", like 260 pounds, and then he just busted through the line for like a 76-yard run, and his speed was unbelievable. This dude is absolute monster, and
Pulling away from a safety.
yeah, it's unreal, and definitely enjoy watching Derrick Henry play because we may never see another running back like him again. I also saw a thing that he has 10 rushing touchdowns on the year, and Adrian Peterson, the year he won MVP, I think he had a total of 12.
That's incredible. You remember the year LaDainian Tomlinson had what 28 on the year, I believe it was.
Something
NFL
like
record,
that, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Henry sets that.
especially with the 17th game and the way they use him. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so yeah, both of these guys, I was going to include them on my must starts, but let's be honest, if you have them, you're playing them. They're going to have huge games this week. Both these defenses have pretty poor run defense, so I like both of them, and they both can get a little bit of passing work in there too. Especially Kamara, he's just a passing monster out of the backfield. So I like both of those. I'll let you run down and summarize real quick.
So number 10, we have J.D. McKissick going against Green Bay. Number 9, Josh Jacobs against Philly. Number 8 is Cordell Patterson versus Miami. Jonathan Taylor's number 7 against San Francisco. Number 6 is Aaron Jones against the Washington football team. DeAndre Swift is number 5 against the Rams. Joe Mixon against Baltimore is number 4. Number 3, Darrell Henderson against Detroit. Number 2, Alvin Kamara against Seattle. Number 1, unanimous number 1, Derrick Henry against Kansas City.
There you have it, Hefe's Week 7 top 10 running backs in fantasy football. We'll move on to the wide receivers portion, and we will start at number 10.
Number 10 here is going to be Antonio Brown. And look, Antonio Brown, if you look back at Tom Brady and the offense that Tom Brady runs, you think of guys like Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, two guys that have filled the slot and played huge roles in those offenses. Antonio Brown is one of the best receivers of all time and is filling the slot for Tom Brady. That is very dangerous for teams, and Antonio Brown is doing great when he's on the field. And so going up against Chicago here, who's 17th against running backs, I expect Antonio Brown to have another big game and be the leading receiver there. Again, the connection that Tom Brady and Antonio Brown have right now is crazy. They are lighting teams up, and this is not going to be any different. So Antonio Brown comes in at number 10. Number 9 is the younger cousin of number 10. It's Marquise Brown going up against Cincinnati, who's 14th in the league against wide receivers. So they're top half, and I like their starting corners. I like their starting corners a lot. But Marquise Brown has finally started to show out. He's living up to what people thought he should be. He's not his cousin, but he's looked very good this year. And I think this is going to have to be a hard-fought win where whoever wants to win this game with the Ravens and the Bengals, the stars are going to have to make plays. And lately we've seen Marquise Brown make those plays. And so I think Marquise Brown deserves to be a top 10. He's been playing great. He comes in at number 9 for me. Number 8 here is going to be Jalen Waddle going up against the Falcons, who are 24th in the league against wide receivers in terms of fantasy. And look, when Tua is on the field, he goes to what's familiar, and that's Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle gets a bunch of targets with Tua in the game. And so if he's on the field, and assuming that they're probably down because their defense isn't good. I mean, Atlanta's a game the Dolphins might be more competitive in, but it hasn't looked good lately for the Dolphins. So I assume they'll be playing from behind and have to pass a bunch again, and that bodes well for Jalen Waddle in a big way. So Jalen Waddle coming in at number 8 for me.
Yeah, I like them all, especially Antonio Brown. I personally have him on one of my teams, and a couple of times I failed to play him only because there's so many studs on that offense. But Tom Brady's getting him the ball, he's making the plays, he's putting up the points. So from this point forward, I think I'm going to have to start Antonio Brown almost every single week. Marquise Brown, he's been completely explosive all season long, so I like that too. And Jalen Waddle, as long as Tua can get him the ball, he should be able to produce. He's showing signs that he is going to be a very good receiver in this league. So I like all 3 of those, and we'll move on to number 7.
Number 7 here is going to be Brandon Cooks, who had a down. I won't even say a down week. For what we think it could be a little bit of a down week, but it's really because that entire offense, they didn't score a touchdown the entire game. So obviously Brandon Cooks didn't have any touchdown value there, and they're going up against Arizona, who has a tough defense, but they're 20th in the league against wide receivers, which probably ranked that way because teams are playing from behind against them all the time, so they pass more. And I expect that to be the case in this game, obviously. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't sound like Tyrod Taylor is going to be back, so it's still going to be Davis Mills, which makes me less confident in the entire offense as a whole there in Houston. But, Brandon Cooks, we say it every week. I'm pretty sure, he's going to get his targets, and with the volume that he sees, it's hard not to think that he can't be a top 10 guy. So I had to put him here. He comes in at number 7 for me this week. Number 6 here is going to be DJ Moore going up against the Giants, and this offense just isn't the same without CMC, and it's going to be without CMC for a while. But DJ Moore continues to get the targets. We just need Sam Darnold to complete the passes. You can't, for a long time in that game, it looked like Sam Darnold wasn't even going to be able to complete 10 passes the entire game. It was pretty bad. He ended up being 17 of 41. That is not very good. We hope he can do better. And they're going up against the Giants, who have been a weaker defense this year. So I'm hoping we can get this offense kickstarted in a different direction. But DJ Moore has been getting the volume. He's a guy that probably should get in the end zone here against the Giants, who are 21st in terms of fantasy against wide receivers. So DJ Moore is number 6 for me.
Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of disagreement with the Brandon Cooks thing. I know we had talked about this earlier in the year, where how he is the Texans' offense, so he gets the volume, he gets the point. But I think after last game, it really depends on if Tyrod Taylor's back in the mix. But if it's Davis Mills and they're starting again, I personally may be looking for other options instead of Brandon Cooks, who I happen to have on one of my team. They're going against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cards have only given up 9 passing touchdowns, 217 yards a game. The NFL is a copycat league, and the Arizona Cardinals will certainly watch how Indianapolis their defense played last week against the Texans, and in which they only held them to 3 points. So personally, I don't like Cooks here with this matchup, but he could continue to get his volume. So I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up to me. I personally have him on my sit-him list this week, but I could also see it going the other way because he is their only option,
Yeah, and that's the tough thing. With Davis Mills at quarterback, this offense in general, this offense is it's very unpredictable. There's some name value might come into play here, but Brandon Cooks, he's just so talented and gets so much volume. If he gets in the end zone one time with the amount of volume he gets and the yards to stack up with it, he could easily be a top 10 guy. But like you say, he could easily be a get him out of my lineup because I can't trust him guy. So I could see it both ways.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily Brandon Cooks I'm not trusting. It's Davis Mills, and the defense is figuring him out real quick and preventing him from getting the ball to Cooks that I'm worried about. But yeah, it could go either way. You just gotta check out your roster, see what you got going on, and make the best decision for your team. But yeah, Hefe has Brandon Cooks at number 7 on his top 10. Number 6, he has DJ Moore against the Giants, and we'll move on to number 5.
Number 5 here is going to be Cooper Kupp, who, the only thing I'm worried about here is the fact that they get up, kind of like Darrell Henderson, if they get up, especially if the starters aren't playing in the fourth quarter, if they're up most of this game, they just lean on the run. But, who's getting a lot of the targets? It's Cooper Kupp. And he came out, did his thing again in week 6. I feel like he'll probably find the end zone at some point. Early on in this game, he's crafty. Matt Stafford likes to find him in the end zone. So I feel like, Cooper Kupp was an obvious pick for a top 5. It was just, where do I put him at? So he comes in at number 5 for me. Number 4 is going to be Deebo Samuel going up against the Colts, who are 22nd in the league against wide receivers. And look, I think the Colts secondary, in my opinion, I think the Colts secondary is better when you have Xavier Rhodes and Isaiah Rodgers out there as opposed to Xavier Rhodes and Rocky Sin.
Agreed.
And I think that was proven this past week. Isaiah Rodgers made a play that a Rocky Sin would never make. But the Colts defense, they play a lot of cover two. And the thing about cover two is that it's a bend don't break type of defense, and so they give up a lot of completions. Like they have one of the highest uh, completion percentages against them on defense, and so you would imagine with the volume that we've seen Deebo Samuel get and Jimmy G coming back into lineup, he's going to see probably somewhere between 12 and 15 targets. There's a good chance he catches anywhere between 7 and 12 of those things. So Deebo Samuel should have an opportunity, have a good day here, whether he gets in the end zone or not. If I had to guess, I hope he doesn't, but he probably will at some point. He's a really good player, and this San Francisco team is pretty damn good. So Deebo Samuel should have a nice week. Comes in at number 4 for me. Number 3 is going to be Calvin Ridley coming back after taking care of some personal issues and not traveling to London. They play Miami this week, who we've already talked about doesn't have a good defense. They're 30th in the league against wide receivers, and Calvin Ridley has basically took a bye week. His legs are a little fresher than most people coming into this game. So I feel like Calvin Ridley has an opportunity to finally have a really, really good game here and get on the board in a big way for people going up against Miami. So he comes in as my number 3 receiver.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp's. He's been one of the best receivers in the league all season long. Deebo Samuel's right there with him, having huge breakout games. And Calvin Ridley, I like the matchup here. I have him on my stardoms for wide receivers this week against Miami. Miami secondary has been atrocious lately, especially missing Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. Calvin Ridley is due for a massive fantasy game, and I think he gets it done here. Miami has given up 13 passing touchdowns on the season and on average 292 yards. So I like both Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley to have huge games this week in Miami. So, all right, we'll move on to your top 2 wide receivers for week 7 of fantasy football. Number 2.
Number 2 here is going to be Davante Adams, who is usually like almost a unanimous number 1, right? But there's a reason he's number 2 this week. They're going up against Washington football team, who is 31st in the league against wide receivers. And their defense isn't good. We talk about it every week. They're very vulnerable, especially in the pass game. And Davante Adams sees double-digit targets pretty much every game. So he's an obvious pick for number 2. Not a whole lot to talk about there. He's just so consistent. He had to be up here somewhere. He's number 2 for me. Number 1 here is going to be Tyreek Hill going up against the Tennessee Titans, who are still last in the league against wide receivers in terms of fantasy football. And in the game against the Bills on Monday Night Football, they had their rookie, Caleb Farley, tore his ACL. They're already slim with injuries. They've been riddled with injuries and at the corner position. And Tyreek Hill is going to expose these young guys. It's not their fault that the Chiefs were scheduled at this exact time. It's good for them to get reps, especially against somebody like Tyreek Hill, but they're going to pick on these young guys, and Tyreek Hill should have a massive game against Tennessee.
Yes, he should. Tyreek Hill, obviously, he's always starting on your fantasy team. The dude's the most electrifying wide receiver in the league right now. And Davante Adams, generally, I keep him off my must starts because if you have Davante Adams, you're starting that guy. But just like you said, obviously, he's an every week starter. But this game I wanted to highlight as the Packers are facing the newly crowned worst passing defense in the league, according to my rankings. Washington has given up a league-leading 16 passing touchdowns, and they're the only team to give up over 300 yards a game through the air. Davante should have a huge day. In deeper leagues, I would also consider Randall Cobb, as he seems to be a favorite receiver for Rodgers, especially when they get down to the red zone. So a little side note there. But I like both of those lists you have there, and I'll let you summarize from starting back at number 10 real quick.
All right, number 10 coming in for wide receivers is Antonio Brown against Chicago. Number 9 is Antonio Brown's little cousin Marquise going up against Cincinnati. Number 8 is Jalen Waddle against the Falcons. Number 7 is Brandon Cooks going up against the Cardinals. Number 6 for me is DJ Moore going up against the Giants. Number 5 is Cooper Kupp against the Lions. Number 4, Deebo Samuel on Sunday Night Football against the Colts. Calvin Ridley is number 3 going up against the Dolphins. Number 2, Devontae Adams against the Washington football team. And number 1 for wide receivers this week is Tyreek Hill going up against Tennessee.
There you have it, Hefe's Week 7 top 10 wide receivers. And we will move on to the last little segment of our show, which is the Week 7 surefire starters and situms. This is my own personal list that I've come across, depending on all the research and stats that I do throughout the course of the week to provide you guys the best opportunity for your fantasy team. We're going to start with my surefire startums for running backs. A couple guys, we touched on a couple of them. We touched on Josh Jacobs and Darrell Henderson, but I'd also like to add in Chase Edmonds and James Conner for the Arizona Cardinals. Both of those guys against the Houston Texans. The Texans led the league in rushing touchdowns given up with 11 on the season, 2 more than any other team out there. They also allow 141 rushing yards a game. So I like James Conner to lead the run game and put up some solid fantasy points. I also like Chase Edmonds to aid Conner on the ground, plus pick up his typical passing work fantasy points. Both Cardinals running backs are in for me this week. What do you think?
I kind of feel the same way. I think early on, this might be another game where starters are getting rested in the fourth quarter. So I think there's value for both of them. James Conner, like you said, I feel like they'll come into this one abusing the run game, leaning on the run game because they should be ahead for most of it, or all of it at that. But James Conner makes me a little nervous. I guess both of them do because game to game, you just don't know. But against the Texans, I feel more confident about James Conner because Chase Edmonds gets the passing game role. How much will they be doing that in this game? I don't know. But I think against the Texans, especially in a deeper league, both of them should definitely be started.
All right, and the next group I have here is Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, if he's back, you're starting him. But I would like to throw in Chuba Hubbard for the Carolina Panthers against the New York Giants. Regardless of who's in their starting running back for the Panthers, they should have a huge game against a struggling New York Giants football team. Both players have passing game upside, but just from the rushing perspective alone, I believe the starter in this game will have a solid performance against his 29th ranked Giants defense.
Christian McCaffrey's on IR, so he's out for at least 2 weeks. So it's going to be Chuba Hubbard here, and I think the same thing. I think he's going to be a top 20 back. Very valuable play for this week if you were able to snag him up a couple weeks ago. Hopefully you never dropped him when it looked like Christian McCaffrey was about to come back. And, Chuba Hubbard, an obvious star every week while Christian McCaffrey's out.
All right, we'll switch over to the must-start wide receivers for the week. We've already talked about Devontae Adams and Calvin Ridley. I'd also like to throw in Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Up until this week, Tampa had the worst passing defense in the league. This week, they managed to make some gains, but they're still ranked 27th by giving up 282 yards a game plus 14 touchdowns through the air on the season. Because of how good their run defense is and how bad their passing defense is, the volume for teams passing the balls off the charts. Since Fields has taken over the starting quarterback in Chicago, he has evenly split the targets from Allen Robinson to Darnell Mooney. So I anticipate both of these guys to have a high volume and potentially putting up some solid fantasy numbers this week.
Yeah, I think this is a game where people who got Allen Robinson are finally going to get some value out of him. I don't think it's going to be a lot because I think Darnell Mooney is the favorite target of Justin Fields, and he's the downfield big play guy, and he's been good. We talked about him a little bit last year too. He's very talented receiver. He just needs the opportunities, and he's the reason that Allen Robinson isn't the guy we all think he should be, right? So Darnell Mooney kind of taking that number one role there, and just like you were talking about, because they're playing the Bucs, who are so good against the run, they'll probably be down in this game. I do think both receivers will have value. I think Darnell Mooney has an opportunity to be a top 20 guy. Allen Robinson is a flex option for sure.
All right, another guy I have here is Marquez Callaway for the New Orleans Saints against the Seattle Seahawks. I've had Marquez here a couple times this season, and he's put up some solid numbers those weeks. They were on a bye last week, but the week before that, he had a huge 25-point day. Once again, I have him back in my must starts going against this weak Seattle secondary that gives up on average 293 yards a game and 10 touchdowns on the year through the air.
You know, I wish I knew at this point if Traquan Smith and Michael Thomas were both going to be playing because I haven't heard much about Michael Thomas, but I think Traquan's going to be back. Not entirely sure about that, but you know, it just Marquez, his value has been so up and down this year that it just makes me nervous hearing his name. I'm just like, there's no way you can play him. You just don't know. But especially with the receivers possibly coming back, somebody's got to have a good game for him, right? And I think with the offensive lineman coming back, Jameis having more time to throw is going to help everybody in the passing game. So if you wanted to slot him in, obviously you want to watch what's happening with the other receivers as the week goes on and as we get closer to their game on Sunday. But I could see somebody throwing him in a deeper league. I'm not a guy who would play Marquez Callaway, but I could definitely understand it, especially with the matchup.
Hey, the two times I had him on my list, he performed. So this might be the trifecta for me. We'll find out. But I got a couple more guys here. They're on the same team. They're my last on my must starts. That's Julio Jones and AJ Brown for the Tennessee Titans against the Kansas City Chiefs. Hey, the boys are back against the league's overall number one defense on Monday night. Julio Jones, A.J. Brown accounted for 10 receptions on 14 targets, 150 yards, and 25 fantasy points. Solid numbers against the number one defense in the league. This week, they're facing a very poor Kansas City Chiefs secondary that's given up 11 touchdowns on the year and 277 yards a game. I think Jones and Brown will have a great game this week.
Yeah, I do too. They look like they were all the way back. Julio made that insane toe tap catch that bounced off the head of the defender there.
Yeah, that was crazy, wasn't it? That's typical Julio, though, man. That's why he's Julio fucking Jones.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I literally texted my friends as soon as that happened. I got in the chat and was like, Julio's all the way back. Julio is still Julio. Like he's just a freak of nature. He's like 32 years old at this point. Still looked just like he did when he was 24 out there. He's making plays. And AJ Brown was back to being AJ Brown. Come basically, we've talked about him and Julio basically the same player at this point, just big physical guys. You have Derrick Henry there. They should have a very, like you said, against Kansas City, you would imagine both these guys have very good games.
Absolutely. All right. That's all I got on the surefire stardoms for running backs and wide receivers. We'll transition to the situms for this week. We'll start with the running backs. I have four guys here. The first one's Khalil Herbert for the Chicago Bears against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chicago's fourth string running back against the best run defense in the league that's only given up 54 yards a game on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. Stay far away and clear from Herbert or even D. Williams if he's back in action this week.
Yeah, that one makes me nervous too. Khalil Herbert's looked so good since he took over, but how much are they going to be able to run in this game? Assuming they're probably down for most of it. It's the Bucs' run defense going back to last year. I mean, the run defense is ridiculous. So I'm not confident in it. I like Khalil Herbert a lot. I want to say it'd be a good play to go ahead and start him, especially with all the bye weeks this week, all the injuries that have happened. Somebody's going to have to start him. He's a starting running back, but Damian Williams, definitely don't have faith in Damian Williams. Khalil Herbert's at least a bigger, more physical back and can handle guys nobody can handle Vita Vea, but I think Khalil Herbert has an opportunity to at least be a decent flex play this week.
Okay. Second guy I got on my sit-em list this week is Alex Collins for the Seattle Seahawks against the New Orleans Saints. Another deep backup against a top-run defensive defender in the New Orleans Saints, giving up only 79 yards a game and 4 touchdowns on the season. I don't like Alex Collins here at all.
Yeah, this is another one that comes down to game script for me. I think Seattle's going to be behind. How much are they able to use Alex Collins? In passing situations, they seem to use DJ Dallas more. So I don't feel great about Alex Collins this week. I wouldn't play him. Again, just like Khalil Herbert, there's so many situations this week where people are going to have to play some of these backs that they don't want to have to play. But Alex Collins, if you don't have to play Alex Collins, I would stay away from him as well.
All right, well, we'll move on to the next one. Javonte Williams against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland also boasts a top run defense. So look for a better matchup value if you're considering starting Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon here. Although the Browns have a pretty good passing defense as well, I think Teddy Bridgewater and the Broncos offense will try to win this game through the air and put up the points early on the Browns. What do you think?
I'm kind of torn on this one because the Browns have sustained some injuries to their defense that concern me, and so I think there's more opportunity to run on them. I think the Browns, with all the injuries that they have on offense, they're not going to be able to put up points, especially against the Broncos defense, which is definitely the strong point of that defense. And look, the strong point of that offense right now is the receivers. The receivers are really good, and they're not getting Jerry Jeudy back yet. But even still, they have good receivers. It's just can Teddy Bridgewater not turn the ball over? And when Teddy Bridgewater just had 3 interceptions in a game, I think they're going to want to lean on the run some more, let those two backs do what they do, especially against another team that's very run heavy as well. Probably take the under in this game. This game's probably going to be a pretty short one, both teams running so much. I think there's value for both of them. For flex plays, obviously neither of them I'm confident in being a top 20 running back because they split the carries and snaps so evenly. But I could see both of them being a flex play this week.
All right. Well, we got a little bit of a disagreement in our ranks, but let's move on to the sit-em wide receivers for week 7. I'm going to start this one out with anybody playing receiver for the New York Football Giants against the Carolina Panthers. Overall, the Giants are just banged up. Jason Garrett doesn't know how to coach an offense, and I'm not putting my money down on any other players at this point in the season. On top of that, they're facing a Carolina Panthers secondary that is my number 2 overall passing defense, holding opponents to under 200 yards a game. So for me, I'm avoiding any Giants wide receiver this week.
I almost completely agree with you, except the exception to that rule right now, with all the injuries, Sterling Shepard is the exception.
He's going to get hurt.
I mean, there is that fear that he gets hurt, but he didn't get hurt this past game. He had a decent game, and he eats his target share is over 30% when he's on the field. With the production needs to match the volume, and that's what's worrisome. This offense has so many injuries. It really worries you just how productive they can all be. But if Sterling Shepard is getting a bunch of targets when he's in there, then he's somebody that I would at least want in my flex. I think I have like 6 different fantasy lineups where I have him, and I made sure to put him in this week because
how many fantasy leagues are you in?
I did. I'm in one league worth money, and then I have 10 other leagues.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh Jesus!
I'm 6-0 in 2 of them, and 0-6 in 1 of them.
Well, hey, 2's better than 1, so
that's right.
Yeah, we just won't talk about the one you're 0-6 in. So everybody listening, scratch the last 30 seconds out.
Yeah, you should see the team. Like if I showed you the team, you'd be like, "Oh, you're probably like 4-2 or something." I have no idea how that team is doing so bad. But I've also had the most points scored on me in that league, so that happens.
Yeah, that seems to be my luck. That and the injury bug getting to me. But all right, let's move on. Another guy I have on my must start or my must sit wide receivers is Hunter Renfrow for the Las Vegas Raiders against Philadelphia Eagles. Last week, Renfrow struggled against the Denver Broncos, only putting up 6 fantasy points. Although he had the most targets, Henry Ruggs was able to come away with a near 100-yard game and 20 fantasy points himself. I think the same will be true here, at least with Renfrow facing a tough top 5 Philadelphia Eagles secondary. So I'm sitting Hunter Renfrow this week.
I I would switch Raiders receivers. I think Henry Ruggs needs to be the guy that doesn't get played because Darius Slay is playing great this year. He's one of the reasons, the main reason why their passing game defense has been so good because he's locking people down. So Hunter Renfrow, when I talked about Josh Jacobs earlier, I talked about them using the play action, and we know, like you said, he led the league or led the team in targets, and Derek Carr likes to throw to him. So if they're using that play action more and they're trying to go away from where Darius Slay is, I think Hunter Renfrow has a chance to be a guy who has a bigger week. So he's somebody that if I had Hunter Renfrow, I'd feel confident playing him this week. I'd be a little more nervous about Darius Slay locking up Henry Ruggs.
So you're sitting Henry Ruggs, but playing Hunter Renfrow.
Correct.
Heard that. This is why we keep him around. He's a fantasy guru, man. He's got all the matchups, all the injury reports, everything. He's just a wealth of knowledge, and this is why we do this. This is why we have Jeffe on the team.
Yeah, just trying to do my part.
All right, last guy here. You're probably going to disagree with me because I know how high you are on him, but Michael Pittman for the Indianapolis Colts against the San Francisco 49ers. Ty just re-injured himself. We don't know if he's going to be back this week. He's questionable. He, like you said, he could have gotten in last week, but he's coming off injury, just re-injures himself. How effective is he going to be? Paris Campbell's now out on the IR, so that leaves Michael Pittman, Zach Pascal, and rookie Michael Strawn for the Indianapolis Colts. That's slim pickings for a top 6 49er secondary. So I'm going to be staying away from my beloved Colts receivers this week in fantasy.
That one's tough.
Say it. You disagree. Say it. I know you'd argue.
Because the 49ers pass rush is the thing to worry about with their defense. Their secondary isn't phenomenal. It's just can the quarterback get enough time to get the ball downfield to the receivers? And even if Michael Pittman has been getting a lot of targets, I don't think that's going to change, especially with the injury to Paris Campbell. You would think T.Y. Hilton just kind of going to fill that role and be the explosive piece. And Michael Pittman should be a good option. He's a big physical receiver and somebody that if Carson Wentz is in trouble and the pocket's collapsing and he needs to throw to somebody that's 12 yards downfield and he has to do that 7 times in a game, Michael Pittman Jr. can make a play. And like I said, he's big and physical. He breaks tackles, so he can make plays with the ball and when it gets in his hands, and he has speed to get away from some guys. So he's somebody that I feel very comfortable with keeping in the flex. I have him in a couple of the leagues. He's been a stardom, like sit him and start him every week. I'm not even thinking about it because the target share that he gets every game is exactly what you want, and they try to get him downfield. And so I like Michael Pittman. I could understand not playing T.Y. Hilton. I do think he's going to play, but coming off an injury, he's a little older. Does he re-aggravate that? I certainly hope not. We all hope, injury doesn't happen to anybody, but especially to T.Y. As Colts fans, we hope he doesn't get hurt. I would stay away from him this week, but Michael Pittman should be, until I'm given a reason to think otherwise, should be put him in your lineup. Don't even think about taking him out.
All right. Well, there you have it. Lots of dissension this week between Jeffe and myself, but hey, that's fantasy football. We'll see how it all turns out. Regardless, that's all we have for you. Jeffe, you want to say any parting words real quick?
Nope. I think we covered pretty. Actually, yeah, there's one receiver. I should have put him here on the list. I can't remember his name. He's a Kansas City Chiefs receiver, and he's been getting a decent amount of targets over the last couple weeks. I think it's Fortson. Forston, something like that. If you go to your waivers, Kansas City wide receiver, you'll see who I'm talking about. He's been kind of productive for them. When teams are taking away Tyreek Hill, Demarcus Robinson, and this Forston guy, they've been getting targets. So Guys that, with the bye weeks coming in, a lot of teams are going to be on bye weeks over the next couple of weeks, and the injuries that have happened. If you're really looking for guys, especially in deeper leagues, those Kansas City receivers might find you some value.
All right. Noted. Real quick, we have a pull up on our website, horsemansports.com, that we'd love for you to hop on and cast a quick vote. Again, that's horsemansports.com. Only takes a minute. Hop on there, click who you want to vote for, hit submit. All done. We'll talk about it on next week's episode of the Horseman Pro Football Talk. We appreciate you all tuning in. Hopefully, Jeffe and I were able to provide you with some insight to help get you an advantage in your fantasy league. If you're looking to take your fantasy team to the next level, we also offer premium exclusive content on our website, horsemansports.com. Hop on there, check it out. You will definitely want to get involved with that. And as always, special shout out to all of our WUBI Live listeners for tuning in. You can catch the Horseman Pro Football Talk podcast and Fantasy Central back to back on WUBI Live every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The app is available for download in the App Store, or you can visit WUBI.live for more information. Good luck to you all this weekend, and we will see you next week.